Hey everyone. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Cycle podcast. I'm really excited today. I have a very special guest for you. It is not someone with endometriosis. I follow Enrico on Instagram and he talks about mental health all the time. And so I bothered him to come on the podcast to talk to all of us. And he has been such a nice person to come on and chat with us about some strategies about mental health, especially during this time of COVID-19, and a lot of endo patients are not able to get access to care. So I think this will be a very timely podcast for everyone who's listening. So Enrico, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Melissa. That was an amazing intro. Thank you. So my name is Enrico Incarnati. I am 24 years old. I currently live in New York City, actually Brooklyn, and I'm a full-time videographer, photographer, and I have a insane passion for mental health.
So. And that's why we're so grateful to have you on here. Where did your insane passion for mental health come from?
So that's a great question. Is there a video component to this? So people,
so for
perfect.
People who are listening, you can also watch this on YouTube, YouTube.com/Melissa Boudreau.
That's perfect. So, we'll start here. I have a tattoo on my inner wrist and it says Forza, Forza. And, that is in Italian, it means strength, like translated to English. And it's there for a specific reason because when I believe I was a sophomore in college. Sophomore in college. And that's when I attempted suicide. And that's kind of really where it began. My love and passion for mental health is because it's like each time we kind of go through something, it's almost like the adversity, there's always an opportunity with it. So it's like going through that, it's like, all right, what's the opportunity? The opportunity for me is to be here and to just be present within everyday life and just, just cherish that, right? And I really understood the value of life because it's like, wow, we only do get one chance at this. And I think for me, that's when I realized I'm like, okay, I need to take kind of what's going on mentally very seriously. And that's when I saw a therapist at school, in college. And at the time, I didn't understand kind of how therapy worked. I didn't understand at all any of that. And what was super cool was that therapy only costed me $5 to see a therapist each time at school. Like we had an amazing program and I kind of took it for granted because I'm like, oh, $5, like whatever. If I don't want to go, I don't need to go. And I look back now and I think I'm like, oh wow, like insurance covers X amount, and these sessions are normally a lot of money. And I'm like, wow, $5. It's like, I didn't realize the value of it. So for me, and I've actually seen 3 different therapists. So like when I was at school, I saw one, and then she actually moved, and then so I saw another one, and then I moved to New York City. So like, I've seen 3 different therapists, and now I speak with therapists every Monday. So it's been super, super helpful. And that's something that I'm always an advocate for. Like I'm not a psychologist. I'm not like a professional. If there was any other career that I'd have, it'd probably be in psychology though, because I'm so fascinated. And it's just therapy for me is like the number one thing that I will always advocate for.
Yeah. So that's obviously how some of the strategies I would like to get into that you've learned that helped you when you were going through that path. So when you started out kind of on this journey of passion for mental health, what step did you were in that dark place when that happened, right? What step did you take to like actually go to therapy? Were you sitting there and saying, I need to go talk to someone? Did someone encourage, like, how did you get to that step?
I think what really hit, and this is something that I've learned over years more so, is that the people closest to you, sometimes you don't realize, especially at the time, you don't realize how much of a, I don't want to use the word detriment, but it's almost like you're just very emotionally draining on them sometimes, especially with, and you push them away sometimes and without even realizing it. And for me, there was a point where I'm like, oh wow, okay. Like, I don't want to keep pushing people away, even though I'm not like intentionally doing it.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm like, all right, who can I need to talk to someone that has no knowledge of me, who I am, my life, anything I do. And that's kind of just what the initiative was for me. And I think even just that first step of looking for a therapist, it was almost like, at the time, it was almost like this ego hit, because it's like, wait, do I have to see someone because something's wrong? And that's what I advocate for nowadays, where it's like, you don't even have to have anxiety or anything like going on with you. Like, if you want to just talk with someone, you can, and that's 100% okay.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was like, maybe I don't really need this, like I think I'll be fine.
Yeah.
And then you go, and it's like, every couple sessions you bawl your eyes out, it's like, I actually do need this. So the value of it is just unmatched.
Yeah. And I think having an unbiased third party opinion is so valuable. And I think we forget that, right? Because maybe your parents or your significant other, or your best friend, they don't have different motives, but they love you. And so they may not be able to give you the best advice or strategy. And a lot of people who suffer from endometriosis, which is really what this podcast is about, with the chronic pain, and there does come in, and anxiety and depression have been linked to the disease. And I think we as patients, we carry this burden of guilt constantly, that we're affecting other people's lives, and we're making them suffer because we're suffering. And I couldn't agree more that going to talk to an unbiased third party person that could say, no, you're not, like, it's not your fault that you have this chronic illness, right? Yeah. And so I'd love to get into, what were some of the first strategies that you started using? Were you talking to someone once a week, twice a week, like in the beginning? If I was just starting on this journey, and I was, really suffering, and my mental health was suffering because it's COVID-19, I can't get the care I need, I'm in all of this pain, what do you think someone should be doing at that point?
I think, so I want to relate back to what you said before a little bit, and I think it would be huge with context wise. Mm-hmm. The whole idea of empathy with certain things, I think for a lot of people, it's hard, right? Like, someone who does not have endometriosis might not be able to empathize with someone who does, because it's like, well, I don't know fully what you go through. Yeah. The interesting though is that, however, like you said, anxiety and depression can stem from that. Now, although I don't have endometriosis, I can empathize with someone who might have anxiety and depression from that. Yeah. Now, I've never suffered anything like, terrible. Like, the only thing I've had is hip surgery, and that was like probably the worst thing I had. And I was pretty anxious and kind of, at a low point, because I had to restart fitness all over again for me. So it's like, that's where I can relate with that. And I think for a lot of people, the empathy part with mental health is very hard. And that's why I'm an advocate for, like I said, therapy, and just even taking steps to once a week to see someone, because then you can start to understand, okay, this person in my life, maybe I don't have anxiety, maybe I don't suffer as much as they do. I can have more empathy with why they do, and why they go to therapy, why they're struggling the way they are. And for me, when I was like early on, especially with my father, that was I don't want to say we butted heads, but that was a tough point for us, because it was getting over the hump of like, oh, my son's going to talk to a therapist. And it's just like, Dad, don't label it like that. Like, I am going to talk to someone for me. And what's kind of cool is it came full circle, because a couple years later, then he started seeing someone to talk with someone. And it's like, then we had the conversation of, he's like, now I understood why you wanted to talk to someone, And I'm like, that's exactly why I preach what I continue to preach, Dad, is because it's like, it comes full circle. So to go back to your question of like, what to even do, it's the most important thing that I've learned, especially with like working with Jordan, and this is like unrelated, but with fitness and stuff too, it's like, action is always the driver of something. Like, taking action somehow is always going to lead you to, at least you tried, right? Inaction will always lead you to just feeling awful about yourself and just not feeling good. And for me, what I found is even just taking some small action, right? So like you said, how can you start? That's just maybe even looking online, like for a therapist to talk with. And I know even during COVID times, it's hard because, physically you might not be able to see someone. There's always online options. And I know that might be tough for a lot of people, because it's like, well, I'd rather go in person. And I also look at it, well, let's flip it optimistically. Talking with someone online is better than not talking with someone at all, then, like a third person. So it's like, even just once a week, even just one time a week is so huge. What I also have found lately is I have a little journal that I write every day. And this is kind of interesting. Whatever are the most pressing thoughts, like whatever's at the forefront of my mind, I'll write it down. Or even in my notes app, like whatever's just kind of on my mind, I'll write it down. And with anxiety for me, I have a lot more thoughts that happen too. And it's like, let me just jot down these initial thoughts and let me see if those thoughts are still there after I get these out. And if they are, cool, I'll write these down. Most of the time though, whatever's the forefront of my mind, I'll write it down. It's like those thoughts go away because it's like, I got this out and I got that on paper. And even though I'm not gonna do anything with it, maybe I'll jot it down and maybe I'll kind of go on a little tangent about it. Maybe how it kind of makes me feel or how I'm projecting it to make me feel in the future, right? That's like kind of where a lot of my anxiety comes from, is the projection of something happening in the future that hasn't even happened yet.
Yeah.
And just
I totally get it.
Right. So like doing that for me of like, okay, cool. Let me write this thought down. And why is it making me anxious in the future? Let me actually write that out. And then it normally alleviates me because I'm like, okay, like, is that really going to happen when I actually write it out? And then the other thoughts, whatever I had, seems to just dissipate for me. And it's like, okay, so the real issue was I was projecting something to happen with this one instance, which is why it was causing a tail end of other things to happen. So
that's such a great tactic. Like that, I mean, that just changed. I like to write things down too, but that's such a valid point. Because I don't know about you, but I am an overthinker, a classic overthinker of,
yep.
Oh my gosh, what about this? And then I kind of go down this spiral of what ifs.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that's related medically to, I have a pain. Oh my gosh, what if I have to have another surgery? I'm gonna have to have, like, it just starts spiraling. And I feel like you're right. If you write down kind of what's in the forefront, everything else will just fall away. That's a great tactic. And I like what you said about action. And I kind of want to talk about that because for people who are listening, maybe you're not ready to take that action to find a therapist online. Maybe some of the other actions, I would love to hear what you think too, is just getting off the couch and walking a lap around your house.
Yes.
Or cleaning out your closet, or just something that might seem a little bit more achievable for that day, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm actually going to show you one thing that's helped me a lot, especially during this, is learning a new skill. And I've been putting off playing guitar for such a long time. And I actually spend at least 5 to 10 minutes a day doing it. And the song that I'm learning is Love Yourself by Justin Bieber. So that's something that I've looked forward to, because it's like, that's me taking action on something where it's a skill that I've been wanting to put off. And it's also something that's going to make me better and also make me more proud of myself. And it doesn't have to be like, go run 20 miles or go do this outrageous thing. It's 5 to 10 minutes a day. That's literally all it is.
Yeah.
Even just walking for 10 minutes a day outside just to get some fresh air. And that, like you said, that big thing is just even getting off the couch sometimes is like, it's work to do that. It's not even physical work. It's more emotional and like mental work just to do that. Cause you have to like psych yourself up for that. And I can't stress that enough. Like just even that little action. And I think a big thing for me as well is the food that I choose to eat, right? Like your diet is immensely important, because this is another way of spiraling. And another way that I've learned from working with Jordan, just like fitness wise, is like the choices you make will then affect kind of how you think in a little bit. And this is not to demonize any foods at all. It's just, if you, let's say you choose to eat an entire box of this sugar cookie crunch.
That looks delicious, by the way.
It is my favorite cereal. And this is actually this is a collectible. And it's like, if you choose to eat that, it's like, that's not bad. It's just, is that going to make you proud of how you kind of feel, and is it going to make you proud of now? And then is it going to make you feel better later? Or are you going to beat yourself up about it because it's like, why did I eat that? That was an emotional decision, as opposed to like going to walk around, eat an apple maybe and feel more full with that, and make like a small choice like that. Even a quick replacement, instead of like a full soda, maybe like a diet soda. It's just like little choices like that can make you proud of what you're doing. And
to that point, and just as someone who likes fitness, and I've been falling off since COVID, honestly, I've been good working out, but my food has been terrible.
Yeah.
my one tip for that is you can start over on your next meal. You don't have to feel like a failure.
Yep.
And again, this isn't about fitness and diet,
Right.
but I agree with you that what you put in, if you ate badly, then now you're already feeling bad about that. And then, you're going to pile on and make yourself feel bad. You can start over in 2 hours with an apple if you had a donut for breakfast. It's okay. Like,
I always look for ways of, all right, what's something small that I can take action on to build upon, right? Like reading a book maybe for 5 minutes. Okay, cool. Maybe next week I'll read 10 minutes a day. Or like guitar for me, 5 minutes a day. Maybe now I'll build to 15 minutes a day. And it's just like little things that you can build on that are going to like take you this way, like walking for 5 minutes a day. And then maybe in 5 weeks from now, you're walking 25 minutes a day,
What if people are feeling like just so anxious though, that walking seems like too much, they don't want to get out?
Yeah. I 100%, I can literally feel that right now. Cause like I 100% understand that. For me, what I've always gravitated towards is doing stuff I love. And for me, that's video and photo. That's why I'm so deeply passionate about it. And that's why, even the idea of just going to walk sometimes, I'm like, I have to do something though. That doesn't feel like I'm doing something.
Right.
Even walking for me, I'm like, I need to be more productive with it.
Yeah.
And it sounds weird. And I'm like, okay, so how can I do that then? It's okay. Maybe I'll go take photos while I walk.
Yeah.
And that's a cool thing. Like challenge yourself too, is like, maybe pick up a new hobby or new skill that you haven't even thought of and just try to find beauty within the world. That's what my goal is when I just go walk around sometimes is, yes, we're living through like a terrible time. It's like, there's still so much beauty in the world though. It's like, I want to capture that.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, doing something is always better than nothing, at least. It's like, even though sometimes what I've found is, even though sometimes I am anxious, if I want to walk or do something, if I stick with it almost, it's like, I start to feel a little bit better. Cause it's like, I made that choice of doing something that's going to make me more proud of even just walking. And even though like I didn't want to do it, or I was kind of unsure about it, or I just didn't feel good, it's like, I'm still always more proud that I did it. And even sometimes, man, I remember when I was working out, when was it? Like a while ago when I had torn my hip labral, I was anxious to even do anything like squatting wise, any leg move. I was petrified because I'm like,
of course,
if I tear this again, I'm like, I got to start from ground zero. I was operating under fear. And when I switched that fear mindset to, you can work out, don't look at it from when this is going to tear or if it tears again, just look at it from, you're okay right now, and just operate under that.
How did you so I feel like that's super relatable for a lot of the people that we're talking about. How did you get past that fear though? I mean, sometimes that fear, I feel like it's really hard. And I know in action, I want to keep talking about the action too, but I really want to talk about like, how did you get past that?
Mm-hmm. So for me, I tore my hip labral, almost 3 years ago. I had surgery this coming June. And for me, that was like a real gut check. Cause it's like, I knew what I was getting into of at least 8 months, at least, before I could start to get back to where I was.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like, okay, I know I'm on this journey of building back up. And it was kind of a fearful thing with some things, because I was living in Chicago at the time. I was still going to school and crutching around and whatnot. And I'm like, I don't want to step anywhere. And God forbid, this gets torn again. And, seeing physical therapists and seeing my doctor every so often. So building strength. Then it came to the point of, okay, when I do this on my own, when I go to the gym on my own now, I'm like, all right, like I need to be careful, but there's a part of me that's like, yeah, but let's just kind of see how far we can take things, because I want to push the boundaries with, weightlifting. So for me, it was okay, let's just see what feels comfortable right now with my hip, and even doing small movements. And then it's like, okay, let's try to add a little bit more weight. And there's this thing, it's called, what was it called? Scar tissue, that every time I would squat down, like I would feel it. It would almost feel like it was tearing.
Yeah.
And my physical therapist was telling me, she's like, that's just scar tissue breaking up. Don't think of it as it's tearing. So for me, that's hard, because I'm like, I know what it felt like when I tore it. Like it popped, and this kind of feels like it again, and it's starting to feel painful each time. So for me, it's like, okay, I know I'm okay though. My therapist says I'm doing perfectly fine. X-rays are coming back okay. It's just like, all right, I got to get to a point of not operating under fear and knowing that I'm doing everything I can to rehab as much as properly, and that I'm on track. It's just getting over the feeling and that sensation that's in my hip. And then eventually I built up enough strength with it that, like, now it just doesn't even cross my mind. I mean, there are some movements that I do feel it a little bit, but it's just like, again, taking those little actions of building on it with like 5 pounds here, 10 pounds here, 15 pounds. And if it starts to hurt a little bit, okay, let's scale back. Maybe we're not ready for it yet.
Yeah. That brings up 2 points. Baby steps is something I always tell people. One, if you need to go one moment at a time, because sometimes people are in excruciating pain, then go one moment at a time and know that that pain will end.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I think too is what you talk about that my bad anxiety comes from is I'm an anticipation anxiety person. I play out things in my head before they ever happen, and they're totally wrong and irrational. And then when I'm actually in the moment and doing the action, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
Totally fine.
Yeah.
And so that's why the baby steps I feel like are so important, is once you start projecting so far in the future, you get a little irrational. I don't know if everybody's like that, but I know I personally do that to myself.
That's why I always say, I'm like, baby steps are still steps. Like,
Yes.
Like, you don't need to take these Bigfoot steps or these leaps and bounds to get somewhere. Baby steps are still steps.
Yeah.
And that's such a big thing. And that's such a mindset shift that it's hard for a lot of people, because, I think we oftentimes compare ourselves to other people, and we see that the leaps and bounds that they've made, and we don't see maybe the baby steps that they've had to take in their lives as well. And I think when you give yourself the grace and you give yourself the relief of, look, I'm taking baby steps, these are still steps.
Yes.
And even if I have to take one baby step back, that's fine. Like, doesn't mean that I'm any worse, or like, no. You're going to continue to take baby steps. Like, that's a big thing of mine, is like, even if you've had to take a step back in life for whatever reason, like, it's okay. That's okay. Like, you continue forward, though. You take baby steps then, and you just pace yourself.
Yeah. And I'm a firm believer that if you had to take that baby step back, there is a reason. There's a reason for everything kind of person. I do believe in that. And maybe that step back protected you from something that could have harmed you in the forward step if you went too quickly.
Yeah.
So, and, for people with chronic pain and everything that we're talking about, just like mental health wise, fitness, and everybody that listens knows that I love fitness too. But for me, it really did change my mindset, specifically strength training, because I proved to myself that I'm really strong. And I might not feel like that the hour after the gym if I don't feel well or something happens, but that hour that I'm there and I'm able to lift 100 pounds on my back, like it completely shifted my life. Now, a lot of women who are listening to this are in extreme amount of pain and they can't go do that. But even if you get a 2-pound dumbbell, a can of soup, and you do it and you complete it, it will shift your mindset completely.
100%. And kind of going off of what you said, where it was just even one rep at, like, one rep at a time. Yeah. For me, I used to struggle with this a little bit, where, like, even sometimes going into the gym would make me anxious, because I'm like, I need to get this done quickly, because for some reason I need to get out of here quick. And it was like I was rushing this process, and I'm like, why am I getting anxious about working out when this is something that I love to do? Right. And, it's like this rushed up process. And like you said, would just taking it one at a time, even if you just go grab a can of soup or a water jug, and you just focus on that one rep. That's it. Yeah. That's a baby step. You just focus on that one rep, or that one footstep you take outside, or that one bite of an apple. Like, just that one little thing that I think a lot of people overlook, and they think, well, this isn't going to make a difference. Like, it's not going to, no, it will. Right. Like, it's even if it doesn't, even if you don't have, I don't know, like you let's say you do like a if you want to take a smaller can of soup, whatever, like you said, and you want to do a small lunch, you're not going to have massive legs. No, but like, you're going to get your mind in a good place where it's like, I can do this.
Yes. It almost you're proving to yourself that you can do it.
Yeah.
And like along those lines, I feel like you're a high achiever. I'm kind of a high achiever myself too, but do you put undue like stress on yourself? Like, how do you get out of that mindset? Like, I'm not good enough. I need to work harder, like the worthiness. I feel like that's a big thing too.
That for me came from comparison with a lot of my peers and a lot of people. And I even early 2019, when I first started working with Jordan, because I was like, I was in the ecosphere of like a lot of people that worked with Gary's team, and like, for me, like, they're some of my peers where I'm like, oh my God, I need to step up my game.
Yeah.
And that became anxiety producing, because I'm like, oh my God, I need to be good enough for them. And I'm like, hang on. I'm like, what about good enough for me and good enough for what I'm doing? So it's like, that's where I became the perspective of, and it's a very tough mindset to get into, of not caring what other people think and not looking at what, I want to frame this right, where it's like, we all care what people think. We all do. It's just, if you allow what they think to dictate your actions, then that's going to mess you up. And it's like, that's why you got to focus on where you're at in life and your own journey, and just focus on like what you're doing. And look, again, with the baby steps, right? Like, if someone else takes a big leap, great for them. If you're in the baby step process, that's amazing. Yeah. Like, just focusing on your journey, where you're at, and not comparing where other people are at and with their lives or their journey or like their recovery, or it's like, that is also like, comparison is a big thief of your joy. And like, yeah.
I agree. And I think I do it too. And I feel like one of the bigger things is compare yourself to where you were a week ago, a day ago, a month ago, and are you improving? And if you're not, then what are those small baby steps that you can do to improve? And in recovery or in pain, it's hard, but you have to be happy for the people who are maybe achieving at a faster rate than you. Mm-hmm. I struggle with this too, because then I put the undue pressure on myself. But even, with a lot of women with endometriosis, infertility is a big struggle. So, they may be seeing people on Instagram saying, or Facebook or anywhere, like, I'm pregnant, or, and those things are very, very difficult for them to see. And it's so hard to not be upset and compare. But what you have to look back on is like, how do I take the step back? What are the steps that I'm doing to try and get there, and not be happy? It's hard. Be happy for that person, and then figure out how you can get there.
Yeah, that's a tough thing. I know, for me, like, when I was going through my surgery, I filmed the whole process of like this whole documentation thing that I was doing on YouTube. And I'll still get comments here and there from like younger kids actually who just want it a lot quicker. And it's interesting to see, because they're always just like, well, how do I get back to playing soccer quicker? And I'm like, there is no fix for that. And they're always like, well, how are you already squatting this? And I'm like, well, let's look at when the first video was posted and when the video you're leaving a comment on. That's 2 years apart. Yeah. And I'm like, we got to also look at like that time frame. Like, you got to put in that time for it. And that whole comparison thing comes in again, because then they're like, well, I want to be where that's at. And I'm like, well, then you need to be willing to invest 2 years for that time. And I think for a lot of people too, it's easy to see, especially on social media, Instagram, Twitter, wherever, Facebook, and you look at someone where they're at, and like you said, it's it's being proud of where they're at, and then it's also getting yourself to a place of, okay, well, how can I get there? Right. And that's the thing, is if you're at a place of envy for them, and you're like, well, why can't I be like them right now? It's like, no, that should be a motivation of like, I want to be where they're at now. Instead of like, well, why can't I? It's like, no, why can't you? It's like, you can.
Yeah, mm-hmm. I fully believe that. And I do think you can achieve anything you put your mind to, even if you are in chronic pain or you suffer from this disease. You kind of have to keep fighting, and your journey is going to be different than mine and different than Enrico's. And we're all on this different path. So don't compare. It's not worth it. Your DNA is completely different from somebody else's DNA. So it's
100%.
difficult, but
Yeah.
it's definitely, something that we all need to work on. And remember that you are worthy and that you have special gifts and you bring these special gifts to the world. And if you're in a dark place, I know that it's hard to see that.
There's something about, I was just listening to a podcast recently. Do you know who Logan Paul is?
Yeah.
So I was listening to a podcast by one of his best friends. His name's Mark Donner, and I used to like look up to him because he's a film perspective guy, like a filmer guy.
Yeah.
And he was talking about his time living with Logan, and he was saying he's like I used to think he was crazy because every day in the mirror he would say these things. He would say like these positive things to himself, like I'm going to be the biggest entertainer in Los Angeles or in the world. I'm going to be this, that, and it's like the power of affirmations to yourself and just putting it out there, like what you want, and I know it can sound very hippy dippy. I'm a very big believer in whatever you put out, like the energy you put out will come right back to you.
Agreed.
And it's like, and that's something like I don't have the perspective of, where like, going through chronic pain. It's like, it might be easy to say, or it's like, well, I can say all this, but it's like, you don't understand my journey. It's like, I don't, and like, I would love to have more empathy on that. I'm also a big believer in attracting what you put out. And, like, there's just a weird thing with like the universe has a way of working in favor of you. And like, I don't know, it's like, again, it might sound hippy dippy of just saying positive affirmations. And like, it goes back to being kind to yourself. And like, I think we're all our own harshest critic, and just putting it out there, like who you are, where you stand, what your beliefs are, and like kind of what you love to do and who you like, and just let the universe take control of that,
I fully agree.
You know what I mean?
Way. Yeah, I believe in the law of attraction. I feel like it's hippy dippy too, but it's never not served me in the way that I've needed to, especially if I've been in a bad place and I'm like, I need help, like, please, what can I do? And somehow the path just opens up for me. And, one of the things that I meditate, and I'd love to hear about your tactics too, but I've increased in quarantine to 20 minutes, and it's really shifted 15 to 20 minutes. It's really shifted me. I feel much calmer. I do feel differently. And so I recorded a meditation for the podcast, and what I have people saying is I'm healing instead of I'm sick. And I still fall into the I am sick too, but if I can shift my perspective and tell myself in my head that I'm healing, it may just help bring that energy in.
It's literally that mindset shift of, instead of saying I'm not good enough, no, I am good enough. And like, even in my field, it's very easy to compare. And I know maybe it's, the videography, photography field might not be something that a lot of people like understand, but in my ecosystem kind of thing, it's like, you look at other people's artwork they put out, and it's very easy to compare. It's like, well, I'm not good enough to do that. It's like, no, you are good enough. And it's just shifting it like that, where it's like, I am healing, instead of like, well, I'm hurting. No, you're healing. And it's like, if you look at it like from that optimistic perspective of like, no, I'm on the upward trend. It's like that does such wonders for just like mental state. And for me, I think one thing that's helped a lot, especially with seeing a therapist, is I don't have it on me, but she gave me this sheet. Actually, I do have it on me. I thought I didn't. She gave me this sheet of just tactics of like how to kind of rewire like certain thinking. Here we go.
Love it.
It's cool. It's called 9 essential cognitive behavioral tools. And like, there's so many different things. There's like journaling, there's relaxed breathing, there's progressive muscle relaxation. There's like all these things. And like, this has helped a ton. And then there's this other sheet she gave me too, that kind of just helps with navigate, like, okay, let me see, like emotional reasoning. So if you're like, well, if I feel it, it must be true then, or let me see, what's another good one? Fallacy of fairness, like assumes life should be fair. There's like a polarized thinking of all or nothing thinking. And there's like, it's so interesting because it's like, you can apply each of those to a thought that you have and play it out. And then it's like, okay, is this one of those? And then where is this stemming from and why? And then where is this being projected to? So for me, that's helped a lot with being grounded, and especially during meditation time. I actually don't use like Headspace or any of those apps at all. I will literally just sit outside, especially at night. I don't know why, but 12 a.m. for me is like,
Is your time?
is my time. Like I love it. 12 a.m. or 1 a.m. And it's just so quiet outside. And I love just sitting and being. Like I love just sitting and being, observing kind of how the air feels, what's going on. Is there fog? Okay, how does this chair feel? Like being very grounded in where I'm at, what's around me. And what I've learned from Headspace, which is an app for meditation, one of the biggest things that I will always remember is that your thoughts are like a highway, and you can either choose to go one direction with them or the other, or you can stand on the side and just watch them pass. And whether or not you give into them, I don't want to say give into them, but or like get on that lane with them, well, then that's where you're going to go. Your thoughts are just going to keep passing by, and you can choose whether or not to give into them. And for me, that's been super helpful, because like there's certain thoughts that like you just want to go, you just want to run with it and go 60 miles an hour with, and like, yep, that's where it's going to take me and all this. And it's like, or you can just step back and be more like relaxed, sit on the side of the road and just watch them pass. And it's like, these don't serve me. These are going this way,
Yep. I love that. Yeah. I use Headspace too. And I always think like, if I have a negative thought or a bad thought, I'm like, this is a cloud in the sky, which is another analogy that they lose. And I'm just waiting for it to go by and I'm waiting for the next cloud to come past.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I do. Yeah. So I feel like that's a great tactic too. So journaling, being present in the moment too, which I know, like if you're having a panic attack, I think, and I haven't done this, but it's like, try to find 3 physical things that you can touch something, smell something, and like look at something physical, and it can help kind of bring you down. Right.
And for me, I've actually had panic attacks in the middle of the night. I've actually woken up because of a panic attack, and the number one thing to not do is go on your phone. That will, for me, only increase it.
Yeah.
What I've found is I'm going to put like, when that's happened one time, like I've looked on my phone and then I'll stay up forever, and then I'll just constantly still be in my head.
Yes.
It's almost like you do need to be in that moment with it, and also just ground yourself within that, right? Kind of how you said, where it's like, okay, maybe let me drink some water.
Yep.
Focusing on breathing for me has been huge, especially during then, because it can feel like everything's just coming so quick.
Yes.
And it's just like, deep breaths with that have helped a ton. And and even just sitting on the side of your bed instead of just laying down, because sometimes even for me, like panic attack wise, like having a blanket over you can feel kind of smothering. So like getting the blanket off, just sitting open, and just sitting like very like kind of like, your knees with like your forearms on your knees, and just open, and just an open kind of posture, and just really breathing in, and then just kind of grounding yourself, like, okay, focus, like everything's all good.
I'm okay. You can even just repeat, like, I'm okay, I'm safe.
And then sometimes even on that come down, when like breathing is relaxed, then that's sometimes when I'll like reassess, okay, what was I panicking about? What happened? Usually for me, a panic attack is something that I haven't addressed in my life, and it's something that I'm either avoiding or something that I'm like, putting off. And it's maybe it's a difficult conversation that I haven't had, and that's tough to address. Maybe it's something that I really need to do and I haven't done, and subconsciously it's telling me, you need to do this. And for me, it's like, okay, what is that? And what are those things? And let me address them out loud and be real with myself, because otherwise I'm just going to lie to myself. And it's like, okay, what are those things? And then what do I need to do do that?
Yeah. And that's such a great tip. And I have a book down here. It's called The Science of Breathing. And there really is a science behind, and I'm sure people think that this is kind of woo-woo too, but it's not. Like if you're starting to feel something come on, 10 deep breaths right now, like into your belly, and you literally will start to feel your entire nervous system relax. And it's, doing yoga and breathing changed me. I used to be very anxious, and I would avoid things because of anxiety. And now I push myself into them and I breathe through it. Even though my hands are shaking and I'm sweating and I'm really, really nervous, I still push myself to do it because I know I can breathe my way through it.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Not like on the topic of like anxiety attacks, like panic attacks. I saw this one guy on, you know, TikTok, the app.
Oh yeah.
I saw this one guy on TikTok, and he puts out a lot of good information. I forgot his name. He actually talked about like this tip where grabbing a sparkling beverage like soda or like a sparkling water, and then just like drinking it, but holding it in your mouth. There's something about that. I haven't tried that yet. There's something about that like it grounds you, like especially when you're going through something like that. It, like the carbonation or something, and I'm like, I didn't even think of that. I'm like, that's kind of cool though.
I feel like it makes sense because there's like action happening where you
Right.
have to pay attention to it, right? Like you can't get in your head because something is happening in your senses.
That's so crazy. Yeah. I'm like, I thought of that. I'm like, wow. And then I look at the comments and people are like, this has been so helpful for me. Like I've done this. And I'm like,
great tip. Thank you for sharing it.
Yeah, of course. That's why I literally saw it on TikTok the other day. And I'm like, I never would have thought of that.
TikTok, gotta love TikTok.
Seriously.
Talk about, like, it actually does cheer me up. So I had surgery in New York in 2018. It was my 6th surgery. And it was musically. And then I remember recovering, and like my husband was out like enjoying the city while I was recovering. And I was like, oh, I'm going to just check out this app because Gary talks about it all the time. I'm like, oh, it has a new name, TikTok, you know. Like 2 hours later, I was like happier. I felt better because everyone was just dancing and having so much fun. And I do think it is a happier app. I heard someone say that the other day, like Instagram makes you feel bad about yourself. TikTok makes you feel good about yourself. Like that was like a quote.
That's interesting.
Not my quote because I still love Instagram, but I can see that perspective.
Wow. I could see that too. Cause I think a lot of people, they see Instagram as just like this highlight reel, and TikTok, it's almost like, that's interesting. I've compared myself to people on Instagram. Like I'll be honest about that. Like I've done that. I think we all have.
Yeah, of course.
It's like TikTok though. I see other creators and stuff they're doing. And I'm like, I want to do that. Like I want to try what they're doing, especially like people in my photo video kind of field. I'm like, whoa, I never thought of doing something that way, you know? And it inspires me to want to do that or try something else, you know. It's just, and it almost like makes you kind of want to be better. And it's like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah. So interesting perspective there. Okay. Well, are there any other tactics or advice that you want to give before we wrap up?
Oh man.
Putting you on the spot.
I think a big thing for me is always be appreciative of where you're at, but never forget where you came from. And I have these 2 words on my wrist that are tattooed, process and patient. And you can flip them either way. So it's enjoy the process and be patient, or be patient, enjoy the process. And you can relate this to anything and everything in life. And for me, I've struggled with like patience because, you know, I think in the world we live in, there's this instant gratification. And I've also realized the value of being patient and being at ease, especially what I've realized lately is just even the way I talk. I used to be very high energy, and kind of like when you get anxiety sometimes, like, you know, you want to talk so quick and you can't say things fast enough. It's like, relax, like just talk a little bit more at ease, and it's like everything's gonna be all right. And for me, that's been a big tip, is even just slowing myself down, because especially in New York City, things happen like this, you know, when things are normally happening. So it's like just slowing yourself down, and like you talked about, being present in moments help a ton. And you know, this whole coronavirus thing, it's taken a toll on a lot of people, and it's awful. You know, there is positive though, where it's like what the whole like scenario of just being present in moments of life and just cherishing that, I think is huge. And it's like, you know, what you said, where look back where you were a week ago. I actually just made a tweet about this. I'm like, the goal in life should be to look back where you were a year ago and ask yourself, am I a better person today? And have I done things to be better? And have I done things to make myself more proud? And I think that's the question that we all need to ask, is like, where I am today, was I better than what I was a year ago? And like, you know, it's crazy. So just never forget where you've come from, and always be appreciative of where you're at.
I agree. And I love that. And you just reminded me that one of the things that I learned as well, I think it was Tony Robbins may have said it on Tim Ferriss's podcast years ago, but there's no fear in gratitude. So if you,
I love that.
and it's so true. It really is true when I start to feel stressed or sad or depressed or anything, but then I look around and I'm like, I am so fortunate. I have shelter. I have water. I mean, I go to the basics, right? I've got shelter. I've got water. I've got food. I have people who love me. There are people out there who don't have any of those things, you know, and I do keep a gratitude journal. So I write down 4 things every night before I go to bed that I'm grateful for. Just to help me remember that, because I think if you go to sleep with that in your mind, you have a better rest too.
Yeah.
So
I listened to something by, do you know who Jay Shetty is?
oh yeah, I love him.
I just love listening to him talk.
So great. I know the accent.
He and Lewis Howes had a good podcast. And like, yeah, Jay Shetty just talks a lot about gratitude and just going to bed with gratitude, and just like, because if it's like if you go to bed in a negative mindset or wondering like, well, how can I get more of this, more of that, more of this? It's like you go to bed with like this kind of greedy mindset instead of just being grateful for what you already have. Yeah. And it's just that's another perspective shift and mindset shift of just even the basics like you talked about, where you know, I have my phone, it's a luxury. I have this whiskey and oak candle, it's a luxury. Yeah. Like my laptop that I have, like this is all luxury to me. And you know, the water, food, shelter, it's like it's crazy what even a time like this can really make you focus on, and just focusing on those small things make a huge difference.
Yes. Right. And even if you are suffering in chronic pain, or you have an upcoming surgery, or things haven't been going your way, or you are feeling really depressed, I bet you can find 3 things that you are very, very grateful for. And then the other thing that I do personally too is, it's in my nature, but helping someone else always makes me feel better. So if you're in a bad place or you're sad, pick up your phone, text someone you haven't talked to in a long time. You'll probably make their day, or go volunteer somewhere. Mm-hmm. Like if you want to feel better, pay it forward. And that helps. That's why I do this podcast, right? Like I've suffered a lot, and I want to turn that suffering into something positive. And if you can do that, even in a small way, give your mail carrier a Diet Coke if he wants one. I don't know. It helps. Paying it forward really helps.
I love that. I could not agree more with that.
Yeah. So, okay, love great. That. Well, cool. Why don't you where can people find you? I mean, I know that you may not be a, endo person, but you do have amazing videos and photos, and I think people would really like to find you on social media.
Thank you. I do want to say though,
add it.
How can I be more involved with like endo kind of people? I want to get more empathy towards it, and like more perspective on it, just because like there's always something that I can learn, and I want to be able to, I don't know, I'm like asking you because like I want to be able to have more perspective.
We need awareness, and we need people that's I think the biggest thing is the awareness, so the empathy can come, right? So people think this is a reproductive disease that's centered around periods, and periods are taboo, just like going to a therapist was taboo. I feel like mental health has really changed. So just learning about it, understanding it, and then as a person, I don't know, maybe, this affects 1 in 10 women, or people that have reproductive. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a woman, someone with, a uterus. So maybe there's someone in your life that is suffering. And now that you've had this conversation with me, you may see that, or, having that awareness, I think, is huge. And then, I am planning on having another surgery. And so maybe we can video it. And because I have my doctor's in New York.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's another problem with the disease, is that there's limited specialists that actually know how to treat the disease, because there's so much unknown, and there's insurance, politics. It's really difficult, but there's probably, I think, 200 doctors now that are actually can treat it. And in Detroit, we just got one 2 years ago. So my doctor, I have to fly to New York for treatment.
Wow. See, like that's something where I have no perspective on, of like kind of how that's even, that you even have to fly to New York. Like not even the regular person would have to understand that. And that's something where I want to have more perspective on.
Care is very difficult for us as patients, especially people who are in rural markets that don't have access to the doctors. And then the other big thing too, just like that you probably wouldn't know, is like a normal OBGYN unfortunately isn't educated in this disease. So
Gotcha.
when people are starting to have the symptoms and be really sick with the disease, they're often told the wrong thing by their doctor. So the average diagnosis takes 10 years.
Wow.
10 years, yeah. Which is like, me just telling you this gives me goosebumps because I'm so passionate about changing that, because it's unacceptable.
Yeah. That's why I asked, because I'm like,
yeah,
I want to like do whatever I can to help and like be an advocate for this.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Well, we'll have a podcast that you'll be able to share. You'll be like, hey, all my friends, I talked to this girl.
Of course.
But it's even, I was very kind of embarrassed, honestly, talking about it. And I've been suffering for over 20 years. About 3 or 4 years ago, I started to get really sick again. It kind of comes in waves. And I just started talking about it on social media, as embarrassing as it was. And I actually posted about it on LinkedIn, and which was very embarrassing because I work in a very male dominant industry. Mm-hmm. A CEO from a major company called me on my cell phone and said, "Oh my gosh, I think my daughter has this."
Wow.
And found and only knew, and I'm not saying this is all great because of me. I took that risk to put myself out there, and now she's getting the treatment that she needs. So that fuels me to just be like, okay, I'm just going to talk about my period on the internet, and it is what it is. So that's what I've been doing. Really, it's just even having someone tell their story makes a big difference.
That's phenomenal. Wow.
It's crazy.
That's amazing.
And crazy, like embarrassing for me to have to talk to him about it, but it helped. So I did it.
Yeah. But if you think about it, that's more like you being able to be vulnerable is a way of then him having more perspective for what she goes through. And it's like, wow, I never would have known about this otherwise. So.
And that's what he said. He actually told her he thought she had it based on what I was talking about symptom wise.
Wow.
Yeah, that story, like that's one of the more impactful, because I was really scared to post on LinkedIn. I'm fine on Instagram. I'm fine on Facebook. I'm fine anywhere else. I was really scared to post there, and I just took the risk.
Wow.
And so
you're doing amazing work.
Thanks.
Wow.
I appreciate that.
Of course.
I struggle too, just personally. Like, I feel like I'm never doing enough. I wish I could do more. And I beat myself up about it. Like if I'm relaxing on the couch, I'm like, you should be doing something. You should be. And
sometimes doing nothing is something though. Sometimes.
Yeah. You have to, your own cup has to be full to be able to help other people. And I'm very historically bad at that.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I appreciate you coming on. Anything else you want to add before we wrap?
Nothing. I mean,
we want to know how to find you.
If you guys want to, so I mean, I would say Instagram's like the main place. So just Rico.
He's kind of a big deal.
Kind of a big deal. Rico.incarnati. And then I would say TikTok too is just Rico Incarnati. That's like where I'm at. So hopefully
well, I'll also link it in the show notes for sure too.
Cool.
Okay, well, cool. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you, Melissa.
Very helpful.